The United States has numerous invasive plant species that interfere with natural habitats of native species. Today we will be focusing on 4 pine species that have dramatically changed forest landscapes. These species have become a problem when they interfere with the growth of native plants and change wildlife habitats. These invasives concern U.S. residents, forest officials, and tourists.
The maritime pine is a tree that is native to the Mediterranean within hot environments as well as some parts of Europe. The tree was mostly used for hardwood as a decorative ornament and used within medicinal medicine within its native range, and was then transferred overseas for other countries to use for hardwood protection. The maritime was planted commercially for its wood throughout the world, but it soon became an issue due to its high dispersal rate. Maritime seeds use winds and wild animals to spread its seeds to new locations, and the seeds grow at a rapid rate once germinated. The saplings grow at such a rapid rate that they restrict access to the soil by creating a large thicket of trees, which prevents native plants from growing. This greatly reduces the biodiversity of the areas in which the maritime invades. The tree is also highly susceptible to diseases within foreign environments, which have the possibility to mutate and spread to native plants. The maritime has a similar appearance to the Scots pine, but the maritime can be distinguished by its smaller trunk diameter. The invasive tree is managed through manual removal or can be removed by animals who browse.
Scots pine, Pinus sylvestris, is a non-native conifer in the United States that originates from Eurasia and the Mediterranean. It is one of the most widely distributed conifers in the world. As a note of this tree's positive ecological impact is that it was planted in the United States as a reforestation species and erosion control woody plant. It also in 2005 was between 20 and 30% of all Christmas tree sales in the United States, which that year was estimated at $1.4 billion. So this tree has a highly relative ornamental value. This tree contracts a deadly disease, blister rust or resin top disease. It was well documented in its native range and is very much like white pine blister rust. White pine blister rust, since its introduction to the U.S. in the early 1900s, has caused over $1 billion in control of the disease. It is still relatively new to the U.S., but is documented here, and there is a great concern for its potential to affect other conifers. Red pine is one of those trees that foresters and biologists believe to be at high risk to contract blister rust from the Scots pine. The threat is this disease transfers from Scots pine to other conifers. The economic impacts could be incalculable.
In the late 1800s, pines from Australia and other countries were introduced to America as new shade trees and windbreaks for agriculture landscape by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They soon proved to grow very aggressively and began taking over native species. These pines are now located in Alabama, Arizona, California, Florida, Texas, and Hawaii because they are able to grow in salty soils near the ocean. Australian pines take over vegetation by quickly generating in newly formed beaches and creating shade cover that prevents growth from other species. These trees provide little to no wildlife habitat, as well as interfering with sand available for turtle and crocodile nests because of their shallow root systems. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Committee has determined that Australian pines are able to outcompete native vegetation by producing a dense layer of plant matter below them. These trees have made an extreme disturbance in Florida Everglades in the past 30 years and have proven to be a problem for southern ocean states.
The information gathered on the Norway spruce comes from the U.S. Forest Service database and an article written by Alexei Zinovjev and Irina Cadiz. The Norway spruce is a tree native to the European Alps as well as much of northern Europe, from the Balkan Mountains to parts of northern Russia. It was eventually brought to the British Isles between the 15th and 16th century. From there, it was brought over to the United States, where it has been grown in both U.S. cities and introduced to natural habitats. The Norway spruce has now either spread or been introduced to the Northeast, Rocky Mountain states, and the Pacific coast. Norway spruces are shade tolerant, allowing saplings to continue to grow even if larger trees are preventing them from receiving direct sunlight. When these trees begin to reach full growth, however, very few other plant species can thrive near them. This is because, like other invasive pine species, the Norway spruce forms dense strands as it grows. These strands then block access to direct sunlight for the other native plant species, who are much less shade tolerant than the Norway spruce. Even if the native plant life in the area was shade tolerant, they would still struggle to grow anywhere near Norway spruces who, via the process of leaching, extract many of the vital nutrients needed for plant growth from the surrounding soil, leaving it devoid of the compounds other plants would just desperately need. With this in mind, it can be said that the Norway spruces can be an extremely dangerous threat to an environment's biodiversity if allowed to grow and spread uncontrollably.
Remember, it is illegal in Florida and Texas to plant invasive species of pines. Damaging or cutting some pines can cause them to produce more vegetative growth, so evaluate management options before taking action. Multiple burns and herbicides have proven to be the most effective in these invasive species. If you would like to make a difference and save our country's native species, here are some things you can do. You can hand pull seedlings, apply herbicides to small trees, plant native species after cutting down invasive pines, or contact your local resource department.